Good day, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us for another episode of in our Pure Leadership series that we have run over the past year. It is jointly organized by Pure Storage and CDOTrends, and I believe it is going to be a cracker. Over the past few episodes, we have talked about AI and its impact on storage and infrastructure from various perspectives, from the technology that we are choosing, AI modeling, sustainability. You can catch up with those at our website. But today, since we are starting a new calendar year and a financial year for many, we will talk about money. Specifically, we will be talking about the impact of AI on budget and budgeting. So today we'll be talking about the topic, the AI budget black hole, how to stop the bleeding in 2025. Upfront, I can say that there is no magic formula, but we will be looking at what practitioners are doing and how vendors are helping. In between, we will look at the current challenges and why we should not be looking at AI as a technology problem, but as a core organizational strategy. We will also look at the misconceptions and what we have to really understand about AI to make sure that we can budget for it. To discuss, we have two important guests. First, we have Sukwa Kwok, Asia Pacific Chief Information Officer from TransUnion. She will lend in her expertise and wisdom as she has come through and worked through a lot of institutions. We have joining her Matthew Oostwin, Chief Technology Officer, Asia Pacific and Japan from Pure Storage. Just about as we're going to enter into the discussion, two housekeeping notes. This is a panel discussion where we can all learn from each other. So join the discussion by asking your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom. Please do not use the chat button, which is what we will be using internally for our own communications. Just press on the Q&A button. I will moderate those questions. Please keep the questions on topic. Again, look up for this poll question and feedback form at the end. We will use those to tailor the discussion and develop the next Pure Leadership series. Now, before we begin, it would be great to have you tell us your biggest challenge when it comes to AI. So I'll pull up our poll question. So basically, we are looking at AI adoption from your perspective and what are the key challenges. This is multiple choices. So please select all those that apply. And I'll come back to this with our panelists later in our discussion. So as you fill up and select your options, let's start the discussion, maybe with a gentle and simple observation. A lot of people say generative AI has really shaken up things. So I'd like to hear how companies are adapting to the increased focus on data centers, power efficiency, and storage, especially as they look to generative AI and AI to drive their business goals. Maybe Sukwa, you can lend in your expertise, your observation.
So I have to say that for us, I mean, especially for TransUnion, we're definitely moving more and more to the cloud. But then largely, I think it's not just because of cost. I mean, I think, of course, doing everything on-prem, you have to build everything, that there's a cost involved. But I must say, it's less because of the cost factor, but more because of the lead time, because I think especially for TransUnion, for us to buy any new hardware and software, if it's a vendor that we haven't dealt with, then we have to go through a process just to vet the vendor, and that vetting process is 2 months, and then you have to procure. So from all the step of onboarding a vendor, procurement, setting up, it just take months. And then I must say we are in a very competitive market, so often we don't have the time. We can't afford to wait. So we're definitely moving more and more to the cloud, especially infrastructure. So a lot of our platforms, be it application hosting platform, be it our internal data platform, we're moving. In fact, quite a lot of them has actually been moved to the cloud already.
So you would say time to market is a big issue or concern
What
for.
what I was trying to say is it's not entirely cost driven. Of course, cost in fact, if you ask me if you move to the cloud, especially we're also using what they call infrastructure on demand, and that is sometimes you might even use more, because if you're on-prem, you're limited, you can't use more. When we're doing data analytics stuff, like really large data sets, in fact we've been told don't keep running it, just before you, because every time you run you cost money. So what I'm saying, for us, it's not entirely cost driven. It's more that we want platform, we want infrastructure that allow us to like time to market is faster.
Matthew, your observations?
I think it's been a really exciting couple of years. It depends on your perspective when it comes to AI. I think last year, I'd say the AI conversations just sucked the oxygen out of the room. And we didn't really have an opportunity to talk about anything else. Things like sustainability were pushed to the wayside, I think minimized, while organizations were really thinking about how to harness AI. Now I'll be honest. I think, and I'd be interested to hear Sukhwal's perspective on this, but some of the CIOs that I was talking to over last year were a little cynical about the potential for AI as well. They know that their masters in the boards and the CEOs were very much rotating towards it. There was a fear of missing out if organizations hadn't invested enough and competitors were able to get something of a head start on them. And so I think that there was almost a laborious view that this is work that needed to be done to ingratiate the organizational structure, because that was the trend in the direction. So when I hear Sukhwal talking about time to market, yeah, absolutely. 2024 was something of an AI arms race. It was about who could get out first, who could really innovate the most, and actually start turning these POCs and pilots into something that's usable inside an environment. But here's the thing. You can only do that for so long, because when you start to move into the new year that we're in now, 2025, I expect that we'll see a little bit more maturation in how AI is going to be viewed. I think we're going to move over from this world of, I'll call it AI 1.0 for simplicity, to one where we are more focused on return on investment, where we're more focused on perhaps the sustainability goals. Because if you're a large financial services organization or a government entity, that's still going to be a priority, hitting your 2030 and 2040 carbon reduction milestones, to say nothing of the fact that many of these POCs and pilots are failing. So I think we're in a transitional phase. I think the priorities are probably going to continue to shift over the next 12 months. But yeah, it's been a pretty amazing period of time in the IT space as this rise of AI came up.
Sukhwal, what do you think? Do you see the
Actually, maybe, Matthew, I see it slightly. I mean, I guess I don't see it necessarily just a priority shift. I mean, I guess I'm one of the CIOs. I am into doing new things. I'm starting to think that AI, I mean, it's almost like cloud. I must say, I did cloud back in 2009, 2008, when cloud was popular. Well, before cloud was popular, and now cloud's mainstream. If you ask me, I actually think AI is moving from not just moving to almost, or maybe not quite there, being mainstream. Like, for example, I think a lot of this software, hardware we use now, we buy, there's an embedded AI component. So it's not that I need to explicitly use AI. It's actually embedded in all of the products, software or hardware that we are buying these days. So it's not a priority. It's just become part of mainstream.
Well, and I think here's the challenge for the CIO is cutting through the noise and finding where the value is. Because I was looking at buying a new washing machine over the weekend. Well, it turns out they're all AI enabled now, which was news to me. And look, as a vendor, I know we can be guilty of hijacking terms, but I think there comes a point where you need to cut through the froth and find out where the value legitimately is.
I agree.
So let me say one more thing. And that was Sukhwal's point around it being similar in her view to this move towards the public cloud. And I think that there's some striking similarities where I would agree broadly with the statement. And some of those similarities are around the behavior of the organization when this new technology becomes available. Now, if you remember when cloud first came around, we were also using terminology like the consumerization of IT. And that was largely driven by smartphone technology as well, but I think there was a hand-in-glove relationship between the two. Now, what happened when IT didn't move fast enough? We started to hear this derogatory term, shadow IT, starting to pop up, because if IT couldn't do it fast enough, then line of business with a credit card was able to turn on these services themselves. I think there's some similarities today. I look at the market today and I would say that we're starting to see shadow AI. If the CIO or the IT department isn't able to keep up with what the line of business believes they can get from a value perspective, then they're going to turn to external suppliers like we saw happening.
You know what, I could not
14,
agree
15
more.
years.
I could not
Yeah.
agree more. And hence, I mean, as an experienced CIO myself, I always encourage, especially younger CIOs, I said, don't be too conservative. Guess what? Because a lot of people, I think a lot of the especially heads of IT CIO, they try to be conservative because they don't want to make mistakes. But guess what? You'll be replaced by someone who's willing to make the mistakes and trial and error. So I agree with you that if the CIOs don't do it or the heads of IT don't do it, guess what? The business is going to get someone else to do it, and you still don't keep your job. So might as well, one way or another, might as well go for it.
And since we're giving advice to young up-and-coming CIOs that are obviously listening to us right now, I would say that the brand of the CIO has never been stronger, particularly coming out of the pandemic, where you were the custodians of the digitalization and transformation that occurred as people started to work remotely, as people needed a new way of interacting with authority or with financial institutions. I think that halo is still in place, and now organizations are looking to the IT department to say, hey, you are also the custodian for change here as well. So your brand is very high in tech.
So actually, how do you actually explain this to your IT teams or your IT leaders to make sure that you're one step ahead and don't be too conservative? How do you actually set across that message and open their mindset?
I have to say I'm very lucky. In fact, I was going to follow on Matthew's comment about IT, and I guess something I can disclose, not disclose. I can, for example, within TransUnion, globally as well as in APAC, the IT department makes up 1/3 of all the full-time employees. And if we combine IT data analytics, it's almost 50% of the workforce. So in a way, I'm lucky because I've already joined an organization which already, in fact, the number says it all, that we rely on technology. We rely, and especially TransUnion being a data company, we rely on data. So in a way, I have to say, I'm lucky I don't have to go and convince, okay, let's use it. I've been asked, can we use it? So I guess and hence I picked a company. I'm in a good place that I think the business and the board already convinced that they need technology to take the business to the next level, especially TransUnion is we are in the credit business, which is like, again, say for example, I think it's almost a 60-year-old company worldwide. And even in Hong Kong, it's almost like 40 years in the business. So in a way, it's a traditional business, dealing with credit data. But on the other hand, we rely on technology to take it to the next level. Like I said, I'm in a good place that I've been requested to do more rather than have to convince, can I do more? So I'm lucky.
Thank you, Isabel, for TransUnion using data and analytics, because my credit report actually depends on. Right. Look, I would like to take a short sideways step and see what are the results from the poll questions. Could we have the results so that I can have the panelists sort of comment? Wow. Okay, it's like almost as if somebody saw our topic for the day and decided to talk about it. I guess a lot of people are concerned about costs. Key challenge for AI adoption. 67%, more than half, are actually pointing out that as a bigger issue than data storage infrastructure and data growth. Maybe I'll ask Matt, what do you think?
So I'm a former analyst, and we would run these in our organization and would ask CIOs and decision makers, what's the top priority in choose whatever topic it is. Whenever we didn't see cost come out as number one, we were always kind of shocked and surprised. Of course, this is about pricing and cost, so we see it at number one. What I want to double click on here is governance and regulation. The fact that it's tying with cost is really interesting to me, particularly when it comes to a discussion around AI. And I think this is a nod to the fact that there is a data problem that people are starting to realize that needs to be solved in order to maximize the output and effectiveness of AI. It's only as good as the data that you put in. Do you remember that old adage, garbage in, garbage out? Well, it absolutely works for an AI pipeline as well. When we start to look at where the data is residing, if we've got some people that are joining us from Indonesia, they'll know that there's a lot of frustrations on where data can be located and of course the residency laws around that. I think we're starting to see a big push within Asia Pacific as well around sovereignty, which will be a big issue in 2025, where we start to see governments start to want to take ownership, not just the sovereignty of the data, but I think digital sovereignty as well, ownership of the underlying assets and the data center and the facilities of where these systems of record are held. Now, that can actually be a big roadblock and a big obstacle to achieving an AI system that works effectively inside an organization. So that's the thing that really surprises me, governance and regulation coming up. I see data storage infrastructure. I think that would probably be, the third biggest on the list, along with data growth. Data growth, we know data sets are growing rapidly at the moment. Our estimations show it's roughly around a 50% increase year on year. So there's effectively a doubling every 2 years of the data sets that we're seeing in end user organizations as an aggregate across the industry. So the takeaway for me here is that with this inexorable growth heading in your direction, the decisions that you make today for how you store your data and how you're managing your data are going to result in the effectiveness of your systems of record into the future as well. So it's really important to make good decisions today.
So what?
First of all, I think if again I'm looking at the poll result, I guess it's not surprising costs always come up as the number one. The only thing I guess I want to emphasize is don't look at just the cost, look at the return. Because again, it doesn't matter if it's going to cost us 1 million to do the project. If by investment 1 million, you only get 5 million revenue. So again, I guess I'm just encouraging a slightly bigger view. It's not the cost that matter, it's the return. If again, it doesn't matter. It's not that it doesn't matter how much you spend, but it's more that by spending that, what are we getting back? And so I guess I'm encouraging. Let's look at the return rather than the cost. I also want to touch on a bit on what Matthew mentioned about. I think I'm presuming maybe governance and regulation, and about data residency. In fact, interestingly, I'm actually dealing with it right now. So mainly because we are trying to, because again, we especially for TransUnion, we actually hold both personal data, personal identifiable data, as well as non-personal data. And for personal data, just to let you know, for example, there was a view that maybe a lot of countries do not allow data to reside outside. The government do not allow the data to reside outside the country. But I just want to mention, for example, by looking at Hong Kong, looking at the Philippines, the two key markets I'm looking at right now, is actually not mandated by the government. The Philippine government never say, oh, there's a law, you cannot put data outside the Philippines. No, but the most of the reason why you cannot put data outside was because of organizations might have already agreement with their customers, the data will be in country, especially those countries might be years and years ago. I'll give you an example that because, again, for us, the same thing. For us to change the model, especially we're going to leverage more on innovation, more on the cloud, then there might be a chance where the data will be residing outside the country for us to make use of all the innovative tools. And what we found is again, the data sovereignty is actually not mandated by the government. It's maybe more from the company themselves. And if that's the case, it's something you can actually you can actually overcome that. Because, for example, we are going through the process where, like we might talk to some of our customers and change our contract. By the way, back in the time when we set those contracts, we said the data will be in the country, but now with innovation, there's a need to put it outside the country. So I guess I want to mention that as well. And on the infrastructure, on the data's about the data growth. As much as TransUnion is moving to the cloud, I do agree that we cannot put all the data in the cloud because the federal cloud cost is quite expensive. Also costs money to put it in and take it back down. So I do think, especially if you have a hybrid model, for you to control the cost, you probably need to work out what sort of data should remain in the cloud and what should be on-prem to strike a balance in terms of cost and ease of access.
So actually, on that last point, how do you actually come up with that balance?
Well, because cloud, like I said, cloud is handy. Put it this way, time to market is quick, no doubt about it. Time to market is quick, and also like the fact that we are also using what we call infrastructure on demand, and that is, if you need more, you can, we don't subscribe to however much CPU, however much storage, you can have as much as you like. But then with that, if you keep let your data set grow bigger and bigger, because the cost will get higher and higher. So I still encourage that, like at some stage you need to work out what sort of data don't need to be on the cloud, and I call it bring it back down to the ground. But I would only maintain those, for example, those you probably need to access within 12 months. I guess I don't want to put down a certain period of time because I'm sure every organization is different. But then, like I can't imagine you want data that you used three years ago to still reside on the cloud. But I was thinking, like maybe 12 months. Whatever you need within the period that matters to your business. And for the rest of it, either bring it back down to the ground, archive it, but don't leave it up there.
Matt, you want to add on to that?
Well, we've been watching this for some time. I think cloud costs, it's well known that they're quite high. That rental or gig economy, irrespective of it being just cloud, seems to be expensive at the moment. Uber used to be much cheaper than a taxi. Airbnb used to be much cheaper than a hotel. And the cloud used to be much cheaper than doing it yourself. So what we've focused on, well, I'm an engineer, by the way, I'm not in sales or marketing. So, we're observing this and saying, okay, if people want to bring things back down to the ground, to use your terminology, then maybe the experience from public cloud also should be replicated as well, because there's a lot of good things that cloud did when it changed IT culture. I think that the tools, the API first interfaces, and also the utility pricing model as well. I think that there's been a cultural accounting change in many organizations that are now used to paying for things as an operational expense rather than an upfront capital expense. So, we've been very focused on how do we recreate that environment for a customer, but also have the benefits of on-premises. And I think this lends to the point that Sukhwar was making, which is around a blended future, around a hybrid future. I still like these characteristics of public cloud. I don't necessarily need the elasticity, the infinite elasticity that a hyperscaler can give me, because this particular workload is now predictable. It's, in more of a steady state. And if that's the case, my internal teams are more than likely able to do this with better tools on premises or, in a blended model, and provide an opportunity for the organization to then redirect the budgetary savings towards where the innovation is occurring, back into AI and back into other areas, which inevitably is probably going to be in public cloud as well. So it's this constant cycle of finding where we can rationalize, where we can, save money, and where do we reinvest that, importantly, for the growth of the business.
Matt, to your point on that, cloud costs, especially egress costs, do you see that a lot of people are getting fed up with the kind of cloud costs that they eventually occur? Do you see that?
Look, there's definitely some frustration with it. I mean, there's some frustration with a group of vendors at the moment with costing and licensing, etc. It's not just the hyperscalers, but it's true to say that organizations are saying, this used to be a better value proposition than it is today. And they're looking to make a change. We're sanguine on the matter because we can work with customers whether they go into a public cloud or whether they want to do things on premises or something in between. But I guess observationally, I'm seeing a lot more what Gartner analysts would call repatriation than I have in the last 5 years. What does repatriation look like? It's more than likely going to be, specific workloads, specific applications, and the data sets are probably going to be object as well. So lots of, S3 object buckets being moved to different locations, for the characteristics that can be provided by a blended or an on-premises offering.
Just wanted to say at this point, we will be going into some of the audience questions. Please do participate. I'm calling out to everybody who's joining us. Please send your questions through the Q&A button. You can raise your hands, but I would prefer if you just use the Q&A and just submit your questions. There's one question directed at Sukwa, which is TransUnion and improving customer experience with AI. From your perspective, how is it implemented and how do you budget for it?
Hey, so put it like TransUnion, because first of all, we have the B2B and B2C business. So customer experience is definitely very high on our agenda. And like I mentioned, I think for TransUnion, because a lot of our software, be it, for example, because I'm trying to say what I can say, what I can't say. For example, say identity. So for example, because we talk about credit data, right? For us to verify that person is that person, identity fraud, we apply various AI technology to make sure the person accessing the report is indeed that person. And it's more than just checking your ID card, checking your face. A lot more to it. Of course, too much. that combines. Excuse me. That combines, for example, facial recognition, combined document. No, sorry. Let me just hang on.
Take it down.
Combines facial recognition, combines document verification. So there's different technology involved. Also combines tapping into a database of the subject may have some fraud background. So that's what I'm trying to say to you. But then if you look at just identifying the subject is indeed the person, now that we have deepfake, for example, it's quite interesting. My boss recently got a message from her boss, but but the whole video was fake, but it looks like our big boss. So, but all of these fraud going on, and all of these sort of and so we make sure on identification, we actually apply a lot of AI on it. And I think we also apply an AI in fact, it was a project that I actually encourage my staff to do, is because, whoever live in Hong Kong, you probably know that Hong Kong addresses are really quite funny, right? So you could be a door at the Queenswell Central, but the number is a completely different number. So, and for us, again, to make sure we identify this subject is indeed the subject we have in the database or a new person, we want to make sure the address is as accurate as possible. And we actually use machine learning on that. And I'll give you an example. We start off using the new territory addresses, because I think they're a little bit more standardized. And for example, the AI model, the machine learning model, the accuracy improved from 50% now up to almost over 90%. So once we've done that, and then we're training the model on, for example, new territory address, which is slightly better than maybe the Hong Kong address or the Kowloon addresses. So again, all of that, we're improving the accuracy of identify the correct address, identify the correct subject, so that's what we're doing, because I think for us, data accuracy is important. The right person accessing the right data is also important. So it's not so it's more than just like having nice user interfaces. It's making sure that we're presenting the data to the right person.
And I guess all this adds to what you mentioned before, ROI, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you could imagine, and by the way, every element of it, for example, just facial recognition, there's a software, just on document verification, there's a software. And I'll give you one more example. We're also looking at, for example, some people will submit, sort of bank statement or some financial statement to prove that, okay, oh, I've got this, to prove that I've got that. But then for us to identify, is it a fake document? We can actually, for example, we can actually probably link that document directly to the bank. Again, that another piece of technology to make sure. So I guess I was trying to emphasize that we actually apply a lot of AI to make sure there's no fraud, there's no, more on the accuracy and the authenticity of the data.
Matt, you want to highlight in terms of your experience with other banking customers as well?
Well, there's a few things to pick on in what we just heard. One is a video was sent to Sokwa's boss, which was mimicking somebody. So this capability to impersonate is incredibly worrying, and I think we all need to be very diligent. Technology is only going to go so far in protecting organizations from this. We do require this new world of constant training and constant vigilance for the workforce to be able to protect ourselves from these things. As for fraud detection and what we're hearing Sokwa talking about, I think one of the great capabilities of machine learning and algorithms is its pattern matching capabilities. It's very good at doing that in almost real time. So there's some great capacity to be able to get in front of fraudulent transactions and be able to unpick that. Since we're giving examples, I'll give you an example of a pilot that was run in Australia. And it's somewhat predictive. For those of you that are familiar with the banking scene in Australia, there's something called Big Four banks. So these are big institutions. They are very well funded. And at the moment, they are running a number of different AI projects. One of the CTOs from the Big Four banks was telling me about a project that they were running where they were anticipating fraud that was occurring on either an ATM card or a credit card. And there's a road in Sydney called Parramatta Road. It's a main arterial that goes into the western suburbs. And they were observing in real time this card being used fraudulently at petrol stations. The AI system then made a prediction that this particular location and this particular spot, this particular time would be when the next fraud occurred. So they rang the police, they worked with local authorities, and they were able to arrest a person in real time that was exploiting the system. So while this isn't necessarily a technology that is ready for the mainstream, there's a lot of implications and fine-tuning that's required before you let an algorithm like that loose in the marketplace, particularly if you're contacting law enforcement authorities. The capability that this possesses to be able to protect institutions and also individuals' funds is absolutely enormous. And I expect to see a lot more investment in this through 2025 because we're starting to see results of these investments.
One of the things that Sokwa mentioned was data accuracy as well as the quality of data. I'm just wondering to what extent. Today we are talking about AI budgets, but I'm just wondering whether when we say budget or costing for AI projects, how much of that cost actually looks into quality of data that you already have, or that you need to have to actually make sure that the AI project goes forward in the first place. How much of that cost is actually part of the AI budget and how much is not? Sokwa, maybe you can answer that.
I guess I don't know whether I mentioned it before. I must say for us, we don't actually have, for example, if I look at the budget, right, I don't have an item say AI projects, we don't. Because like I said, because a lot of the projects, for example, we might have a project called, I'm trying to make sure what I can say, what I can't say, because it's a lot. Say, what I mean is, we might have a product that is we're trying to sell to the market, and there's a budget associated with how much it costs to build this product, to bring it to market. And then for us, we also have a dual business here by doing that, how much revenue we're expecting to generate from that products. So, and in there, but then for us to build that product, that, like I said, there's development costs, there's probably third-party software. And in that, for example, like some of the technology I mentioned, right? Then there may be components in the components of this product that will use AI technology. But again, we don't mark it down and say it's more that, okay, this particular software or hardware that we need to embed in our solution will cost that much, and that piece might be AI. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't have AI like as an item. It's more that if we build a product which is AI enabled, which certain functionality is AI enabled, and how much that will cost. But then we look at the total cost of building that product, which would bring it to the market versus the projected revenue we're going to get. So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Like I said, the focus for us, I mean, we are the focus is not how much we spend, it's how much we spend to make how much revenue.
Okay. If in that case, let me ask the other way around. If you have, let's say, if you're buying a solution or a product, or you're going to deploy one, there is a version that is AI enabled and one that is not AI enabled. Does that make a decision call for you to go for the AI enabled?
Put it this way. For some of the components that we need to embed in our system, it's not that we're going to compare an AI version versus a non-AI version. No, because I think for some of them we already knew that using AI is bad. Because of what I mean, if you use a non-AI version, quite likely the accuracy we won't achieve the accuracy. So you're not comparing apple with apple. Like it might be cheaper, but you're not going to achieve the accuracy. So using the AI enabled version might give you like 95% accuracy. That one's cheaper, give you 85% accuracy. So what's better? It's cheaper, but it's so again. So what I mean is hard to estimate. Okay, that 10% accuracy is that worth that much? I mean, for us, I must say accuracy is actually very, because again, we are in the data business, and like say 10% accuracy, it means a lot. And so it's not that you can put down a number that, okay, I'm going to compromise that 10% accuracy because it's cheaper. No, we'll probably still want to achieve that 10% accuracy to see if we can find a cheaper component to achieve that accuracy, instead of, okay, let's forget about accuracy, let's just go for a cheaper version now.
Okay, and data accuracy is a lifeblood for.
I mean, like I said, for us, we do focus on quality, but again, because especially that we are we're in a business where there are competitors, so you have to win on quality. You have to win on quality of data, quality of services, and also the trust from your customers as well. Because I think at the end of the day, they come to us for credit reports because they trust that our reports are accurate and all of that. So I think some of that you cannot compromise on the quality and the accuracy.
Matt, from a solution provider's perspective, there's a lot of solution providers who bolt on AI tools on top of what they are already providing. I do know Pure Storage is taking a slightly different approach where it's already at the core of it. But I'm just wondering, how do you see companies actually weaving through all this decision making?
There's a quote from an executive at OpenAI that I like to remind myself of. And it was that roughly 1/3 of the results that come from ChatGPT when used in an enterprise setting are hallucinated or wrong. And if I'm using that in an enterprise as a tool, and 1 in every 3 times it's giving me a false answer, I would rather go down to Happy Valley because I think I've got better odds of a win and getting something accurate. It's at that point where you've actually now eroded trust in the technology. And I think this is what we should be really focused on, because without trust in the output from some of these AI models, they become somewhat useless. And this is where I think 2025 will be interesting, because I'm sure we're all familiar with the term RAG, retrieval augmented generation. It is a mechanism to re-inject trust, essentially. It's an ability to be able to remove the hallucination as much as possible, to have data sets that are real, and that can be used to guide the output of the large language model, which is great at synthesizing a response and providing something more meaningful. I think 2025, you're going to start to see more of an approach around agentic as well. We start to see agents being deployed inside organizations. If you're using an agent or an AI agent deployed inside an organization, which is effectively, this is my terminology now, an AI employee, that level of trust that you need to have in its output is going to be obviously high. Now, of course, there's human error. We expect people make mistakes. We expect that there's going to be an amount of error that comes from these systems as well, but it needs to be within certain boundaries. It certainly can't be, what OpenAI is talking about and saying that it's at that 1/3 level. From our perspective, we use AI sparingly. Okay, we've got tool sets across what we call Pure One. So that's a really large repository of data. I want you to think, about 40,000, 50,000 cloud connected Pure Storage on-premises arrays that exist around the world. Each one of those with around about 1,050 telemetry points. It means that on a daily basis, we get 1 trillion data hits. It means that we've got something like 20 petabytes of information. We've got something like 200,000 discrete workloads that are running across the environment. It's a really great repository to be able to understand and analyze what data and applications are doing and how they behave inside an environment. And then to be able to utilize tool sets like machine learning, we'll call it artificial intelligence in this case, to be able to say, there's a better way to be able to run this particular application or a better location for a specific data set. And what we do is we have, I suppose, Thunderdome type tests where we put our best human operators up against the AI operators and we test it. Who's better at this? And we've now gotten to a point where the AI systems can outperform the best storage administrators on the planet. Now we can put our hand in our heart and say, we've got a tool set that's ready for the enterprise. And that's what we're starting to see utilized at Pure. But like I say, we're very cautious about it because if you release a tech that doesn't work, I would feel that there is a lot of negative brand reputation associated with that. And as we all know, you can't unring a bell. It's very quick to unwind a reputation. So we use it sparingly, we use it with caution, but I think that there's a future in it, at least from a Pure perspective.
You mentioned RAG, Matt. Doesn't that actually increase the cost of data? Do people actually understand that, especially with vector embeddings as part of it?
Yeah, look, I don't want to play around with linguistics too much here and try and be tricky with words, but there's a difference between the price of something and the cost of something. It might be costly to run something that is more complex or you need more sophisticated systems. But in the end, when you're looking at the overall investment, when you're looking at what it costs to actually run this, when you're looking at the reputational damage, particularly if you've got externally facing chatbots or AI agents, for example, you can't easily measure the risk to your organization's reputation when we're talking about nickel and diming on a little bit of infrastructure and some software and services to get an effective RAG system up and running. So I think we need to step back, take a deep breath and say, if we invest more wisely, then we're going to get better results. And that aligns largely with what I expect to see this year. And what I expect to see this year in 2025 is that we'll see fewer POCs and pilots run for AI, but paradoxically, we'll see an increase in the amount of spend, on something that could be tagged AI. In other words, let me say that a different way, that the fewer projects that we have will be better funded and they will be largely tested, predicated on the POCs and the pilots that we've run in the past. So we've now got, as an industry, and as a region, a better read on what the direction of travel is from where we're getting our return on investment with these technologies.
So do I agree?
Largely, yes.
Okay, that's good. Look, we have around 5 minutes of discussion left. And again, I would say that please do send in your questions. There is another question that I would like to come to slightly later. But I just wanted to have a quick read on AI budget optimization. and this is not about cost or dollar signs. I'm just looking at the relationship effect. So in terms of the AI journey within your company, how has it changed on your relationship with your solution providers? And what do you look for in making sure that you have a successful relationship because especially when there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to AI development at this moment?
I think put it this way, I think providers come and go, but then as you probably see, especially those in the industry for quite a long time, the technology company that have decades and decades, you notice that the reason why they're successful, they're still relevant, so to speak, is because they constantly transform. And I guess I would not put names. There were companies where maybe 30 years ago, they were very strong on one thing, but guess what? They've now transformed to a different, they still rely on whatever earned their, initial bucket of gold, so to speak. But then for them to be just as successful, even more successful, is because they are willing to transform. So me as a buyer of this technology, you do look for a technology partner who's willing to transform. But guess what? We're trying to transform the organization. How can I rely on a vendor who's not even willing to transform themselves to help me transform? You know what I mean? So just, I think hopefully that's quite obvious. So I do look at, and again, when I say transform, is actually sometimes doesn't mean, it's not about money, it's about mindset. There are providers out there who stick to what they know best and won't try new things. So I definitely look for a vendor or provider who are willing to transform and willing to step into grounds that I want to tap into, but then they are the technology company. Hopefully they do the early steps first so that I can actually follow them. Because again, as much as I like technology, I do work for a for example, credit reference agency. So as much as we do have a lot of people in technology, we will never have as many technology people compared to a technology provider. So I will look for that sort of vendors who are open-minded, innovative, but willing to transform their own business and their own products.
Matt, from a solution provider's perspective?
I really like that response, Sukhwa, and I do agree with that. From our perspective, we're really focused on the engineering and we're focused on the technology. And that's why an engineer is here talking today and not someone from sales and marketing, I suppose. We invest 20% of our annual revenue back into R&D. And we do that with the belief that we're in tech and we can't forget what our core value proposition is and what we're trying to accomplish here. We deliberately outspend our competitors because the view is if we're ahead technologically and we spend more on research and development, then we can continue to extend that lead. And I would give the example to the people that are listening to think about companies that have in the past had great technology. I'm not going to name them, but I'm assuming with a little bit more information, the name will jump into your own head. And they've been acquired. And they've been acquired by an organization that starts turning down the research and development and starts becoming more of a sales motion, where they start being more aggressive with their negotiations around software licensing, for example. And it starts to leave organizations with a bad taste in their mouth because you see the innovation doesn't exist anymore. And now you're feeling like that the costs are blowing out and it becomes a different style of relationship. That's detrimental. And when we start to see that, the conversations I have with customers are about how do you help me get off this? What's the potential path forward for me and what options do you have at Pure so that we don't have to continue to deal with this? But from our perspective and my perspective, that constant maniacal focus on R&D and continuing to think about how to solve technological problems as simply as possible, it shouldn't go away, and we shouldn't forget the industry that we're in, which is high tech.
So Matthew, you would love to hear that because I was one of those customers, and I actually still remember it was kind of back in maybe I can't remember 2017, 2018. We're all using a certain solution that for me like a couple of decades where but then I did change and you know which one I changed to, and again I can't say it, but I did remember the change of the storage solution went from taking 1 week to like 1 day, or maybe actually in fact it didn't even take a day, it took only half a day, and to me that's innovation, because again it's a complex, I mean, it's a complex and essential piece of infrastructure. And then for the new solution can take like 1 day to deploy instead of like a whole week. We used to have the vendor coming on site for a whole week just to get it up and running. And anyway, that solution with an orange color, we did it in less than a day. But I just want to happen because I think you were saying, because I went through that particular journey myself, and I think I was one of the earlier. That was in my previous company, we were one of the earlier adopters of a different storage solution.
Yeah, and it's not easy to make that initial change in trust, because there's so much. Well, it's like that old joke that CIOs like to tell each other, which is, how can you tell if a vendor is lying? Because their lips are moving. And I think that we always must focus on authenticity and go back to those investments in the tech. But when you talk to a customer and say, hey, there's no more downtime, there's no more outages, there's no need to take your systems down to be able to upgrade your hardware and your software, you can do that while it's live. That takes a lot of trust for a CIO who's been doing something a particular way for so long to believe that that's actually the case. But once you start doing it, once your teams get their weekends back, once they don't have to do patching and updates on a Saturday night or into a Sunday morning, then it really is life-changing for people.
Right. We are reaching the end. I'd like to ask one forward-looking question, but more on the technology side. Maybe Supwa, you can say, what do people need to keep in mind when you're talking about AI, budgeting for AI?
Goes back to, do not look at the cost, look at the return, look at what it can bring to you, what difference it can make. Look at that first before you decide whether it's worth it. Because if you look at cost, sometimes you forget about the upside. Focus on the outcome, focus on the difference it can make. And if that difference is important, do it.
All right. Matt, you on point?
Think about the future. Think about what systems should look like in 2 years and 3 years' time. Think about how you can embed flexibility and choice. As much as I sit here, look into the camera and tell you that I believe the following things are going to happen in 2025, predictions can be wrong. And when it comes to a really fast-moving, fast-changing environment like AI, then you need to build in flexibility. So ensure that you've got the great characteristics of high tech, but at the same time, that ability to be able to pivot the strategy predicated on the direction of travel that you're going in. And can I just say to Jonathan, who had a question that we didn't get to, about what are the workarounds with ChatGPT. I want to talk to you separately. Yes, that there are some great shortcuts and workarounds there. Our apologies for not getting to you, Jonathan. Thank you for the question. And I'm sure in the background we'll work out a way to get you a response.
Thank you. And that's it we have for today. A real great conversation. So a round of virtual applause and a real big thanks to our two panelists. We hope you found this discussion useful, and you can be honest to us by filling out this feedback form. You just please scan the QR code that you see on the screen. As I've said before, this is not going to be the last. We will launch another series soon, and so look out for those details. Your feedback in that feedback form will matter on how we craft it. You can also catch up on all our past discussions, including this one, on our website. I will also be summarizing these conclusions and creating a thought leadership article that we will feature in our data platform newsletter next week. Other than that, on behalf of Pure Storage's Matt, Supwa from TransUnion and CDOTrends, have a great year. Hope to see you virtually and in person in 2025.